But we have the next speaker who can throw much more light on this India-China issue. I have my colleague Shrikant Kondapalli. He was my colleague both in JNU and IDSA, and absolutely bright mind so far as India-China relations are concerned, so far as Chinese studies are concerned. May I request Professor Kondapalli to take the.
A very good morning to all of you. Namaskar. Let me thank the Management, Education and Research Institute and the Center for International Studies for this invite. And let me also congratulate the organizers for taking up this. And I would suggest that before the 18th summit begins somewhere in August, September, some kind of policy related note can be sent to the South Block so that you have the relevant suggestions made just before the summit. And publication of these would also be necessary for wider publicity and traction. My presentation is on the Chinese role in the BRICS and what it means for the 18th summit meeting to be held in India. So broadly, I have, from the point of view of the Chinese, let me look at their role in the BRICS. China has about $20 trillion of GDP, gross domestic product, and they have foreign exchange reserves of about $3.1 trillion. Then they are the largest trading partner for 128 countries in the world, including for majority of the BRICS countries. For us, for instance, last year, $155 billion trade. For Russia, it was about $224 billion last year, slightly reduced from $250 billion in 2024. So there is a lot of trade between China and the BRICS countries. In fact, China-BRICS trade is about $562 billion last year, which means this is roughly half of the entire intra-BRICS trade. So China alone has half of the trade that flows in the BRICS countries. So that's the major point that we need to remember this in terms of what it means for the grouping as such. Secondly, the Chinese have begun CIPS, cross-border payment system. So this is now roughly about $1 trillion in 2024, but has slightly declined this year for various reasons, tariffs, sanctions, etc., etc. But that's in the first quarter of 2025. We don't have the full-fledged figures for 2025 as a whole. But the expectation is that the CIPS transactions would also be slightly higher compared with the Russian SPRS and the Indian UPI. With UPI, we are doing a lot of transactions, but the Chinese one is higher than all the other. Brazil has PIX, which is used extensively in Latin America. But the Chinese CIPS has been very predominant in terms of the cross-border transactions. So China's role here is quite significant. On 3 days ago, Ma Chao-shu came to India to attend the Sherpas meeting. And he made a statement that China would push through high quality development, number one. They also mentioned that China would like India and other BRICS countries to pursue community of shared destiny. This is a code word for the Chinese political and security vision for the next few decades. I will explain this a little bit later on. And thirdly, they also mentioned about the Chinese projects. Now, the reason why I am suggesting this is China today has a slightly different agenda than compared with many BRICS countries. And we need to take this into consideration because if the 18th BRICS summit is to be successful, we will see a lot of Chinese initiatives with their own agenda. And that needs to be factored in for the success of this summit meeting in Delhi. So in 2012, when Xi Jinping became the General Secretary of the Communist Party, he introduced the word community of shared destiny. And then subsequently in the General Assembly of the UN, as well as in other international fora, he elaborated, but still it remains very opaque. The concept of community of shared destiny. Now, in the General Assembly, he mentioned that this will be about partnerships, political partnership, economic partnership, and so on and so forth, security partnerships, and so on. Still, it is not clear what exactly it means. In my reading, the community of shared destiny is some kind of an alliance in the making. China is looking for friends and allies in the international system so that they can counter the United States. You have seen the Trump administration main focus of tariffs is actually China. Sanctions, of course, Ukraine-related events. But because China has $8.9 trillion surplus, trade surplus, with the United States in the last 20 years, and the trade deficits have become an electoral issue in the US politics. So they have identified that, and one of the ways to counter is the tariffs. But since identifying China singularly would result in a lot of problems for the US, so they impose tariffs on everybody else, including NATO partners and, of course, on India. We are now suffering from, since August 27th last year, we are suffering from 50% tariffs, 25 extra for those Russian energy imports. In the case of China, on October 31st last year at Busan meeting, there was an agreement between President Xi and President Trump on the reduction in tariffs in lieu of the Chinese lifting the ban on rare earth minerals. As you all know, the Chinese have 56% of the global rare earth minerals exports, and they have banned these for every country, including for the United States. So as a result, the climb down by the Trump administration resulted in the decrease in 147% tariffs to about 10%. There are legacy tariffs which were also imposed on China, as with the other countries. Now, this is the decisive moment where the Chinese decided that they now need to look at comprehensively, and BRICS is one platform through which China can pursue its policies. So that is a point that I want to make forthright on the summit meeting would have this clash between US and China. To go a little bit farther, in the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017, China decided to advance towards the center stage. And Chinese use these words, not very explicit, but with a lot of deception. So advancing towards the center stage actually means they want to replace the United States in the international and regional orders. In regional orders, of course, we and the Japanese and the Indonesians would have to face the flag in the long term. But at the global level, because their target is the United States, so BRICS would be a platform for them to become a shield in this shadow boxing between US and China. This is the reason why India did not take up the bait on de-dollarization. When the local currencies was discussed at the Rio summit last year of the BRICS, extended BRICS, India did not commit on the de-dollarization. Of course, local currency exchange is a different matter, but in terms of a single currency, BRICS currency, there was an idea from Russia on the unit, but that has not yet been taken up by many countries. Brazil initially very enthusiastic, but even they have not been able to take up this idea. So in other words, de-dollarization is an effort that the Russians put forward initially, but China also takes it up, but in an indirect manner rather than a direct manner, because China had sunk in trillions of dollars in global trade and also US Treasury securities and investments in different parts of the world, some $1.3 trillion of investment abroad. So these would be problematic if China completely shifts over to the de-dollarization debate. However, they have taken several measures in this regard in terms of indirect pressure on the United States. So this is a long game in which BRICS would be caught up in terms of the pressures from China and the United States. Trump already had said if BRICS countries do the de-dollarization, the tariffs will be very high on the individual BRICS countries trading with the United States. So there is that red flag already on every other BRICS country's mind. So that is a background. I heard in the morning and in other sessions about the Bretton Woods reorganization. China is the only one country which is actually pushing very hard on the IMF reorganization. In 2010, the IMF had initiated a reorganization, and specifically the voting shares are to be tweaked because China's GDP has become number 2, and it should reflect the IMF voting shares should reflect the GDP across the globe. And so the Chinese shares have been increased to about 6% in the IMF, while the G7 countries' shares have still been at a very high level, including for the United States and others. So in this round of reorganization, China benefited extensively in terms of the IMF voting shares tweaking. So that is one aspect that I would like to again highlight on this front. We all know that the former premier of Russia, Primakov, raised the issue of multipolarity. The Russians were in the forefront of multipolarity, but Russian multipolarity is defensive in nature, while Chinese is more selective multipolarity. In the case of India, we have been also using the multipolarity in the Russia, India, China, trilateral and others, but it is more balanced multipolarity in the sense of taking into consideration every other stakeholder's view. So in the case of China, selective multipolarity creates issues both at the financial level and at the political level. So financial, we just discussed those CIPS, the NDB, CRA, contingent reserve arrangement, or the other things. But in the case of political multipolarity, the Chinese role is more selective in nature, and this creates problems. So finally, I would like to say that the Chinese role in the Indian summit meeting this year would have some consequences. Specifically, we should look at the Chinese slogans of high quality development, which is again political in nature, not necessarily economic and industry or technology oriented, but more political oriented. Second is the community of shared destiny, which has the alliances in the making in China, although they don't advertise this because of the concerns. And the other is, I agree with the previous speaker, Dr. Kozulin, that we need to focus on counter-terrorism issues. That is our national security challenge number one in the BRICS. But BRICS has not taken up this issue extensively. So there is a need for us to refocus on that. On the other hand, they have conducted a maritime exercise last month close to South Africa. Iran sent ships, but they were asked to leave. India did not join the maritime exercise because there is China want exercises everywhere else other than in South China Sea, East China Sea, or other places, but they want exercises in Indian Ocean, in the transatlantic, Pacific, Atlantic, but not in the vicinity of China. So I think BRICS should also propose, if there is a maritime exercise, to look at the stability in South China Sea and others, because 50% of Indian trade is through the South China Sea. So we have to be agile at the Indian summit meeting this year. Thank you.